right, I have got a great podcast for you, and I don't ever like to boast about myself. But the beauty is, today, most of the stuff isn't about me, and that's why I feel so great about boasting about this. This will give you the ultimate look. I would dare say the framework eval of Scott and I, the stuff that I've done, the analytics, is, I think, more prominent on the back end. But focusing on the offensive line, I have an amazing study that Rick Long and Abel, you see him on my lives with me, sent me this information, and it will tell the story. And it's so clear, and it's going to help us clearly define the past, if we haven't already, the present, where we're at, and then the future in some regards. So I think it's going to be a very, very good one. I'm going to put chapters. I've got loads of graphics from this site. It was a Reddit post. And before you say, oh, Reddit, these are all next-gen stats, and you can go and verify it all. But it is very, very good. And I'm going to put little highlights on it so it can be very clear to go through it. It's a phenomenal study. You'll have the charts and I'll have the chapters, so it'll help you navigate it. I'm going to try to make it as concise as possible because there's just great, great information. And I believe that. I believe that you need think tanks. There's weaknesses in all of us. Steve Molly had a live with him, and he talked about a chart I hadn't seen. There's some consternation among some of the viewers. So I'm going to cover that in a later podcast, a next podcast. I was going to put it in this one, but it's been too jammed up. But I also got schooled by a guy who played in the pros on certain parts of what I said. And I'm going to break that out together in the next podcast on this. So you're going to really enjoy this one. I'll get into it. I just want to do a little bit of a preface. Before I do that, I'm learning. Please like, subscribe, comment, and if you subscribe, hit the notification bell. That keeps me doing a gig. I don't like to play the salesman, but it's the only way to stay in the biz. And I appreciate if you do that. So before I get into this thing, I want you to understand a fundamental psychological reality called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive is your brain. Dissonance is disharmony, like static. And if we hear things that we don't like, sometimes we get this emotional feeling and then we block off what we're hearing. And it can happen to all of us. It happens to me. But you can get a small part that is worthwhile paying attention to, but because you're in such resistance, everything gets dismissed. And I think that's a lot of reasons why sports talk gets into this heated battle, especially among fan bases of the same fan base, also opposing fan bases. So I want you to understand, I'm a flawed person. My grandma used to call me, you're a pip, you're a piece of work. And so I know I have flaws in my game, but the one thing that I think I hold on to that is a strong point to my character is I understand cognitive dissonance, and I really try to engage people that have opposing viewpoints. And it's part of the reason why I'm doing all these podcasts. I agree with most of the stuff I'm hearing, some of the stuff I don't, but I want to hear and I want you to hear. You need to have a pool of information that you're looking at objectively and then stashing it so you can have better evaluations and you can really see things. And if one person brings something and there's only 1% of value and you don't listen to it, you're not getting better. So we really all need to do that. I've learned. I was Mr. Cognitive Dissonance. You could have seen my face on the poster at one point. But I've fought very, very hard to defeat that. So here's the framework of the study. Here's a little graphic. Standardization creates an average score of 0 for each score. The average value of each metric is at the bottom of the chart. The stats are from next-gen stats. So this is a purview of major offensive line statistics from next-gen. So the statistics themselves are accurate, but we want to flesh that out. So it's going to be blitz percentage, pressure percentage, blitz deflection percentage, average pocket time, rush yards before contact attempt, 10 yards plus for run game, run success percentage, run stuff percentage, and overall win percentage times 2. see the little formula there. And the methodology you can see here, I'll put the link below so you can go check it out yourself. But that's the general overview of how this thing is going to get laid out. Now, here is the final results, and then we're going to reverse engineer this thing. So you can see to the left, bottom 5 worst offensive line overalls, and then to the right, NFL best offensive lines. So you can see Miami. Don't run away if you don't believe it. We'll show you the information. But in this grading system, Miami was the worst offensive line in football. Now, good news, Patriots are number 4. We got to get out of this division. Your division games are critical. So I put that there because you want them to have bad offensive lines. But there's a downside. I'll get to that. Bottom 5 worst run blocking offensive line, Miami was number 2. Bottom 5 worst pass blocking offensive line, Miami was number 3. 5 worst win percentage offensive lines, and you'll see that New England and the Jets there, we're not there. And there's a little thing I'm going to tack on that is involved, but I'm not in this study, but I'm just going to add an addendum. I'm not going to examine it closely. But then on the reverse side, you're going to see something a lot of people have been talking about, something I've been talking about for a while. So Baltimore dominated by winning the Triple Crown, first overall run blocking, pass blocking. Denver, overall win percentage, 74.4. Overall, Washington passes Philadelphia to rank 2. Eagles number 3, Tampa 4, Denver 5. Green Bay, Arizona, Buffalo, Detroit, and Kansas City complete the top 10 offensive lines. Arizona is the only team not in the playoffs in this group. And so percentage-wise, it talks about the weight and value of the offensive line bringing success to an organization. Houston had the worst offensive line amongst the playoff teams, 26th. Other playoff teams with O-line outside the top 5, Chargers, Steelers, Vikings, Rams. But the thing with Houston, they did a shuffle with their offensive line, and they kind of got it more right towards the end. So, and they had injuries, so we got to put that little caveat there. But top 5 blocking offensive lines, Arizona, you can see, was the only one. Number 3, everyone else was in the playoffs. 5 best offensive lines, Baltimore, Denver, Philly, Green Bay, and Tampa Bay, pass blocking. Top 5 best win percentage offensive lines, Denver, Baltimore, Minnesota, Tampa, and Washington. So clearly, if you're looking for odds to get into the postseason, offensive line is a huge generator. And as Harbaugh said, it's the only unit that everybody depends on, but no one else but they don't depend on anybody else. Offensive line makes the NFL world go round. There was a lot of battles over that, and it just doesn't, it's not really supported. It's just not. I mean, you can have a good one aspect like Arizona, but when you're in those categories, you find yourself in the postseason more often than not, a high percentage. So here's the big chart, lots of numbers. Oh my gosh, how do we get through this thing? I'll break it down section by section with a lot of little highlights so we can get through this. I'm not getting into all of it. There's a lot of stuff that I'm not getting to, but a 10-hour podcast maybe is not what everybody's into. So here's the first one. Green is the Dolphins. Blue is the AFC East. And this is overall win rate percentage in blocking, okay, and pass. So we were ranked 26th, okay? And you can see us down here. And the reason we're at the bottom is because it's the whole chart. It's not section by section ranking. But so you can see we're ranked 26th. New England, 31st. The Jets, 29th. And you can see why they were very inconsistent. And the Jets added a lot of talent pieces, but something didn't jive. That's a bigger talk about framework, philosophy, and concepts. I won't get into that. Bills, they were number 8. And we know that they've got a pretty darn good offensive line. So the next one here will be QB pressure percentage. Again, Dolphins, they're ranked 30th at the bottom. And you can see they got 28.80% pressure percentage. They were only blitzed 17%, was the least in the NFL. And so an NFL or any offensive line, if they have the advantage of 1, they're getting rushed by 4 and they got 5, it's a lot easier to block. But when you start bringing blitzes, yes, it opens up the back end if the quarterback has time and he can make the reads. But it makes it harder and harder for the offense to handle because it goes from 2-on-1 in one area and the rest is one with some chips and stuff to now it's 1-on-1 all across the line, and it gets tougher. So the fact that we had this pressure percentage and blitz percentage is a stark bad mark on when you're looking for an offensive line. You want to see high blitzes if you're going to see high pressure, but you don't want to see higher pressure with low blitzes. And again, 2 wasn't in every game, but, let's be real. Blitz defense percentage, minus 51, that's the ratio. And then, obviously, you can see the rank at the end. So, immediately you see 26 in pass blocking grades wins, which is not great. And then you see we're having a 28 percentage, which is not the worst. It's low. It's one of the lowest. But when you factor in the lack of blitzing, it highlights and magnifies that because then the quarterback's got to throw into thick secondaries. So next graphic here, this one is a little bit bigger. This is involved the run game. And you can see Miami was ranked 32nd. Now, 51 10-plus yard plays. That was kind of low. Not super low, but it was like middle of the pack-ish, sort of. You could see stuff percentage, 26.30, which was the highest by far, by like 5%. The next level below that would be 31st at 21%. So it's 5.30% more in our stuff to the next lowest behind us. And this is telling you this offensive line really struggles to pass block, even though, as I've said for a while, it's the easiest job in the NFL. We throw the fastest, we get blitzed the least, and we're not able to run. And as I said at the beginning of the season, if you don't run inside at high leverage linebackers and playing cover 2, then you are not getting the defense out of their groove, and it's just going to be an uphill battle. Yards before contact, 0.99. We weren't the lowest. Titans were 0.92, and 0.9 was Jacksonville. And then I think it was 95. Indianapolis Colts, Dallas Cowboys are in that range too. So we're not the lowest, but when you factor in, we're not getting blitzed. So it's not run blitzes either. So we're seeing these light, loose fronts, and we're still getting that yards before contact. And you can't ask, say, someone like Achane, who's a nifty back, to break a lot of tackles. It's not his game. And so it was a very constricted run game. And you can see our ranking there was 32. So we're at the bottom of all the categories. All the major categories are there. And being at the bottom in all of them is really very difficult to deny. I talked about the 2021 offensive line as the 45th best offensive line in football. This offensive line was terrible. I don't know exactly how it stacks up with that one. I think that one was worse because they didn't have Tehran and they had just Davis. But this was not a good offensive line. This is terrible framework. And if we see offensive lines drive the majority of the playoff teams into playoff contention, what does that say about how the skills and the defense and the OC and the DC have to respond? The OC knows I can't really do much. They're sitting in non-conducive environments all day, and I got to make hay. And it talks a lot about why we ran screens. You want to say it's Tua? Let's not get into that. We called a lot for a reason. But clearly, if you're not getting blocking, you're calling screens, and you're calling a lot of stuff you saw us call. But then the skills, they're getting shortchanged too, because the blocking drives all the skills, including the quarterback. And then the defense has to sit on the field more. And then the DC has to respond by knowing, hey, you know what? My guys are getting tired. We're not getting points. It sets a perturbation through the whole process, a negative, or if it's very good, positive. And clearly right here, it was negative. And to me, the why is always critical in football. You have to know the why. So Here's the offense, right? As we see it, you see the offensive positions, you can see a little grouping there with the defensive techniques, and then below that, you can see the offense with receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, guard, center, tackle, end. We right now have Paul at tackle, Brewer at center, Jackson at tackle, Teron at tackle, unless we move on from him, or he decides to move on himself, Meyer, Hayes, Hines, Braden Daniels. That's not a good crew, guys. We were told that it's about chemistry. It's about playing together. It's about repetitions. It's about the coach. It is to a degree, but talent drives the NFL. And for some reason, we were told that you need talent everywhere, but you just put anybody there and you got the coach and a particular philosophy, it's going to work. It doesn't work like that. Meyer, he's very small. I like some of his movement skills, but if we're going to shift our philosophy to a portable offense that can exist in bad environments, travel on the road, and stress defenses, it can't be all outside zone, especially with no cutback, and the cutback is part of the problem. Meyer, to me, unless he makes huge strides, is not a guy who can move people. You've got to have guys that can move people without having to get on the move and create leverage. And that's why everything was so complicated. I said, well, that's why we have to do that, because we can't move people. But you can't move people if you got light in the pants. You can't win in the NFL. You don't set the terms. The environment sets the terms. Opposing teams with certain talents set the terms. And if you got enough talent, then maybe you can set the terms here and there and make big plays. But you just can't say we're going to run finesse, run outside zone, and our guys can't really move anybody, and it's going to be successful. And so Meyer, Hayes, Hines, Braden Daniels, these guys are a long way away from this year. How do they grow to next year? I don't know, but I'm not going to bet the house on it. Teron might come back. Maybe they talk about a pay for play type thing. I don't know if he wants to come back. I think he might. Talking about Lamb might want to come back. Lamb's too old. We got to get young bodies, talented bodies, big movers. Teron, I don't know if he's coming back, but if Teron comes back and Jackson comes back and Paul comes back, then you're forced to find a tackle that plays guard, or have one of these guys sit, or then maybe you're going to find some guy that can't really play the position, or you're going to have a misfit, too many tackles. And Paul's a guy who can move people. I like him a ton. He's still got a long way to go, but that's the framework that you need to a larger extent. There's still some concerns. Brewer, again, he can't move people. Occasionally, but he's not. Yes, he was strapped with Jones and Eichenberg, but you could see he struggles with power. He always has. He's a smaller guy. If you get the right guards around him, it might enhance him. But if we're going to kind of adjust to what we need, it's be able to move guys inside, you're going to have to do a lot of help to his side. And that's not easy. And so I kind of like him in a lot of ways, but I'm kind of concerned in others unless we set this up. And I talked about that last year when I did my eval. He needs big, powerful guards next to him to help him out, because he can get stuck in doubles among other things, especially if the line is zero, nose tackle in front of him. It's a problem. Jackson, they talk about him uplifting his offense. He's okay. He struggles in pass blocking. He's okay on the move, but he can't move anybody anyway. He's got poor technique. There's something there. I don't know, and he's always injured. So this is a very, very Swiss cheese riddled group of players. You're going to have to fill it out. I don't know if you can fill it out this year unless you had the magnificent. You're going to need at least 3 to 4 guys to add. Now, you can get some in free agency, but you can't pay a lot. We're minus 11 right now. We need lots of players. You can get rid of some guys and get money, but it's going to be filling all the holes. It's going to be tough to pay for a premium guard or tackle. But you can find maybe some other guys that are average. They don't all need to be studs, but you're going to need depth, quality depth, I think, a few positions, and you're going to need 2 to 3 starters. So this is not going to be an easy run for the Dolphins. But if you're not able to block inside and outside and pass protect, then you're asking the skills to have to raise their game higher and higher. An average offensive line sets the difficulty at 0. And then the higher it gets, the lower the difficulty. I mean, overall basis. But the lower it gets, the higher and higher the skills have to play. I'm not here to be Tua on and justify Tua, but what quarterback has that kind of blocking and it has success on a consistent basis? And Tua isn't, you could say Burrow. Tua's not Burrow. He's not. Burrow is a better quarterback. You know, Tua can do things, and he can do some things better than Burrow, the quick release and to throwing with anticipation. But he's got the injury thing, so does Burrow a little bit. But I don't think it's as much as Tua. But Burrow is bigger. He's more mobile. He's got better accuracy overall. He's got better processing. He's just a better quarterback, but he won't thrive. His offensive line was much better. There's no way, and even Hill, you look at Hill, what happened to Hill? He's getting old. Maybe he was injured. Maybe what happened to Waddle? If this offensive line's not blocking, then everybody else has to go higher and higher. And if the greatest player in the league, number 1 rated, had a struggling season, what does it mean for the guys that are underneath him as far as spectacular talent? It makes it an impassable wall to get over. So I think that it's very easy if you don't like Tua to say, the offensive line's not a big deal. And then it gets another way to say, oh, well, you know, I heard this person, they said this offensive line was this, or I want to believe it and to dismiss it. And maybe me, I'm not a big guy, you know, I'm not Mr. Football, but that is a stack of numbers and stats that you cannot deny. And even if you want to say, well, not 32, how can you get past 25? And at 25, Texans made it at 26. But they got a lot better towards the end of the season, and you can see they struggled a ton. So in the end, guys, offensive line makes the NFL world go round. I think this is a phenomenal layout, and I think you just have to own up, if you haven't, to how valuable this O-line is. I know the Dolphins told you this is not true. I know that people told you it's not true. And for a while, I might have sounded like the crazy person, but it's just basic football. And this was a phenomenal study. Rick Long and Abel, I want to say thank you so much for this stuff. I love the comments. I love people who give me good information. I love people who correct me or say things contrary to what I stand for, because then it allows me to battle that cognitive dissonance, to examine myself, and to give you guys better content and me to learn so I don't have to screw up as much. So I appreciate everything you guys do for me here. Curtis saying, be well, go Fins. Curtis out. Start building your own online sports book today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.